You know, my wife and I, we tuned into Sunday school and we forgot to mute. So for several minutes, we're just chatting, you know, just talking. And finally we get texts. Hey, you guys probably ought to mute you ought to mute during Sunday school. So who'd you hear that from, Ryan?
I saw it on Kurt's bulletin board.
Yeah. Oh, great. I leave town for a few days and it makes it clear to Kurt's. Wonderful. But Ryan, you haven't revealed who you heard it from yet.
I can't remember who I was talking. I can't remember who I was talking to. I'm trying to remember.
No biggie. No biggie. My wife, we both made the comment. It's a good thing we didn't say anything that would have embarrassed us.
Right.
So can't imagine that.
That would have been really funny.
Yep.
Oh,
particularly at Sunday school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yep. It would have been truly
embarrassing. I'm just glad it wasn't Phil joining in. Not muting. It could have been great entertainment for all those people.
Yeah.
Careful now. Careful now.
Okay, well, we've got 2 council members with us, 3 council members, so we're ready to go, even though we won't be voting on anything tonight. But welcome to those who have joined us this evening. Council, it's good to see your faces again. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And we'll start tonight. I understand Council Member Popcorn Swanson has got the thought, invocation, and at least the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Bill, let's go with you.
You know, this last week, Webster's Dictionary and several others have put out the word of the year. And the word that they chose, surprise, surprise, I thought it was kind of lame, is pandemic. Oh, well, okay, you worked hard for that one, didn't you? Sure. I was listening to Boyd Matheson this week, and his word of the year, I think, is one that is more fitting of our community and more fitting of the people that we get to deal with and be a part of every day, and that is resilience. There's an amazing amount of resilience here in North Ogden. We've been through a lot as a community. We're going through a lot now with COVID and all that kind of good stuff. And in the 15 years that I've been lucky enough to be a part of this community, resilience is very much a word that applies to the people of North Ogden. And I'm grateful for the resilience that our citizens have, that wears off on us, that gives us in our daily lives. I think it's a wonderful thing. And that's it for the thought. So if you'll stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Swanson. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and get into our agenda. We'll start tonight with any public comments. John, do we have any the public with us tonight?
We do have the public. We do not have any raised hands as of yet or comments.
Okay. We'll give it a half a second.
Let's see.
Just in case there are any public comments tonight, once again, state your full name, your address, and please try to limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes.
So we have a comment from Brenda Ashdown.
All right, Brenda, let's hear from you.
Brenda Ashdown, 193 East Pleasant View Drive. I understand that you're going to be discussing my road tonight. I just want you to remember that it's my road, so be nice to me. No, really the only comment that I have is if you're going to close off Pleasant View Drive, I would hope at the same time you will put a light on 300 and 2700, because that's hard enough to get across right now. And then if you close off Pleasant View Drive, we're going to have that much more trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. And that's surely our intention is as traffic goes down 300 East. We think that there would be enough traffic, UDOT would warrant a light there. So that is the hope. So thank you for your comments, and we'll always be kind to you, Brenda. We're a kind group. All right, any other comments? John?
No, but Cheryl is here now, Councilwoman Stoker.
Oh, she is?
Yes, but she's on her phone and it's not letting me promote her to a panelist.
Okay, well, she won't be too long before she makes it home.
Okay. So
All right.
I have promoted, or she should be able to talk if she would like to when you start asking questions, but I just can't promote her to a formal panelist yet.
You know, John, I like how you promote people. You've got the key to promotions, so thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and then move on to item 2 on our agenda. I think we have the Utopia Fiber presentation tonight. Roger Timmerman will present to us. So let's go ahead, Roger.
Okay, we should.
Okay, I just got promoted.
Yeah.
Yeah, John's good at promoting people.
He knows what he's doing. Hey, I appreciate you giving us some time to come talk with you today. I've also got Kim McKinley. If you can promote her, she's also with Utopia. I don't know if she's watching. I think she is.
Yes.
So anyways, so my name is Roger Timmerman. I'm the executive director over at Utopia Fiber. Utopia Fiber, we're a group of cities that first really didn't want to get into this. We just wanted good broadband, and had all sorts of attempts to get private companies to come in and offer services. And there was a lot of try and failure. And at some point, these cities said, you know, we really need to have this connectivity in our communities. It's critical for our homes, our businesses, economic development, quality of life, education, you know, all of those things. And this was back in 2004. And so things have changed dramatically since then. And now cities, the demand for this among cities has just skyrocketed because that hasn't changed. We are still struggling. I mean, demand for services has gone way up, and the available options for broadband from the private providers has increased, but not to the pace that demand has. So demand is actually higher now to do something about this. Now, we are not a provider. What we do is we enable the private companies. So this isn't us coming in and saying, hey, they're not doing a good job, we're going to come in and replace them. What we're doing is we're coming in and helping them. We're building roads essentially for them to be successful and to compete and offer a better service. So if I can, let's see if I can share my screen here. I've got a little bit of a presentation we'll go through. But feel free to interrupt me. I'm not really a big fan of going through some sort of formal presentation. I'm very interested in having just an informal conversation with you about options. We're not selling you anything. I mean, if we were to do a project with Utopia in the city, it's a partnership. We're an interlocal governmental entity. None of us make any more money as a result. We're not, like I said, we're not selling you anything. This would just be a new partnership for us and an extension of what we do and bringing that to your community. And we do believe passionately in it. And that's why we do promote this and why we're adding cities and growing this. So anyways, hopefully you can see this presentation. Is that coming up okay on your screens? Importantly here, is Kim on here? Okay, yeah, she's on there. I see her. So she's our Chief Marketing Officer. So on some of the competitive options and marketing and sales and all that stuff, she's a real expert on this stuff. So I may defer to her. It's always good to hear from her, and she knows her stuff. So she's shaking her head over there, but she's very modest. She's really good. So let me jump into this. So Utopia, this is the membership of the cities, the top part here. These were the 11 cities that created the entity. We are in over 50 cities now with various fiber projects, but fiber to the home has been a focus on those original cities. And we also have these new partner cities. So we've built out Woodland Hills, We're in process of building out Idaho Falls. We've built out Morgan City. That one's done. West Point is on the verge of being done. There's just one little pocket that got held up because of a canal permit, but it's pretty much done. And then Clearfield, we're building very actively right now, in addition to some of the remaining pockets of those original cities. Many of those are done. Many of them have some remaining areas, and those are getting wrapped up this next year. Our fiber network is basically this I-15 corridor with redundancy, and we have lots of cities and connections and in those cities, but also in all the other cities along that corridor. From a time perspective, you've probably heard some bad things about Utopia. Utopia struggled when it got started. I said, you know, the cities recognized the need, but when they did the original phase of the project, it didn't go so well. They didn't get the revenues they'd hoped. You think about that time, there was no Facebook or YouTube or Netflix back in 2004. And so things have changed dramatically since then. And now we do get the customers and revenues that we need on our projects. And the turning point was really about 2009, 2010. At the same time, there was the creation of a new entity called UIA, and UIA has been really phase 2 of Utopia, but it's a separate legal entity. It's the same thing though. It's a partnership of cities. It's an interlocal entity. And so UIA kind of took it from there, and UIA has built out over $230 million of fiber projects. And all of those projects are successful. They're not costing the cities anything. UIA bonds for these projects. So there's no city debt. UIA bonds for it and builds these networks and gets customers. And those customers pay off the debt and all the operating expenses of the networks. So all of the UIA projects have been successful. And you hear, well, wait a second, I've heard some cities have to pay on some shortfalls. Well, the cities that participate in that first phase have. But the nice thing is that there's an opportunity today for these new city partnerships to get all of the good and none of the bad. And it's almost unfair to those original cities, but they've acknowledged that there's mutual benefit in that. And so we have allowed, just in the last few years, new city partnerships at UIA, where cities can partner with us and really just piggyback off of what has been a very successful track record, a very good economy of scale, and really avoids all the risks that they took on in that first phase because things are going really well these days. This is kind of the political side of it a little bit. You know, we hear that, you know, hey, this Utopia thing, is this, you know, an anti-competitive overreach of government? You know, you'll hear that. If you guys want to move to next steps and have discussions about this, you're going to get people who think that, right? And it's like, well, not really, actually. You know, we're not the provider. This is an enabling system. So we say Utopia is a pro-competitive enabler of private sector competition. And really what that means is without Utopia, you've got one or maybe two good providers, maybe a couple little wireless providers that can kind of pick a couple areas that work, but ignore others, areas that don't work. And that's really all you got. With Utopia, we come in and we say, well, we're going to build the fiber, but then we're going to give access to that fiber to anybody who wants to use it. And so suddenly you get all these Utah-based service providers that can come to your cities and use that. And so we are actually enable competition and enable a competitive marketplace by doing that. And we don't compete with them. And that infrastructure that we put in it's actually open to Comcast and CenturyLink if they want to use it, but they don't like as much because we do bring competitive options where normally they have kind of a duopoly. We treat it a lot like roads. You know, cities build roads, and those roads enable different companies and different purposes. And so this is an example of FedEx and UPS and the Postal Service all competing with each other on the same roads. An airport would be another example like this, where we have different airlines that all use that public infrastructure and they compete with each other. And those airlines pay fees on their tickets, and that pays for the infrastructure, the airport. And we do the same thing for fiber. We build fiber and we let all of these companies, they all use it, and they would love to come to your city and offer services, but they can't because it's difficult and it's expensive if they're to do it on their own. But by collectively sharing in that cost of fiber, it works for them and it works for us, and the whole thing pays for itself. The price to the end user we bill everyone $30 a month who signs up. If you don't sign up, you don't pay anything. But our bill is $30 a month. And then the service providers have all sorts of different pricing and speeds. So that it starts at about $35 for a 250 megabit connection, symmetrical. So that's upload and download. And so that all-in cost is $65 a month. And then for about $13 to $15 more, you can get a gigabit connection. And it varies by a couple bucks per based on which provider you pick. And I'm sorry, the font's so small, we keep getting new providers and that shrinks my chart. We're up to 13 providers now on the system. So you've got a really nice menu. If for whatever reason you don't like the company that you've picked, you can switch providers. Now there's no installation charge, there's no contract term. You can try them for a month and cancel. There's no obligation. It's just really very different than what most people are used to with contracts and very few options. Well, it's not just about internet. This is needed. This is critical for education. It's critical for work. It's critical for telehealth. It's critical for the city itself. The city itself generally becomes an anchor tenant of the network as we implement smart city applications and other things, and utility metering and smart grid applications. And we partner with UDOT to implement upgrades to their system so they can do better traffic management and cameras and things like that. And it supports future technology. It supports wireless backhaul even we don't compete with wireless. We actually work with all of the wireless providers to upgrade their systems and their backhaul to their towers and things. It helps with these things. These are the top political issues in Utah. And we have air quality. We put in more air quality sensors into our networks than anyone else in the state. So if you go to KSL's weather app or whatever, any of these places, and you look for air quality sensors and readings, you'll see that Utopia Fiber cities are covered in these sensors because we include them in all of our installations. And so we're the #1 provider of air quality data in the state. But for us, it's really easy because we have connectivity in a lot of places. We work with UDOT for transportation, traffic improvements. We connect schools all over the state. We just met with UEN earlier today about connecting additional schools. We help with government spending, jobs, and economy. I mean, this is not our list. This is just what's important to people politically, and fiber helps with these. Just to jump through a couple examples, I'm going to flip through some of these. Water usage is important for people, and cities will often use our connectivity to connect and upgrade their water management so they can control irrigation and conserve water. We do Wi-Fi solutions. We did a whole bunch of CARES Act projects to provide public Wi-Fi in various city facilities across the state. Using that money so that there was some sort of a lifeline to people who didn't have broadband at home. And this was in cities that don't have fiber to the home, but we partner with, like I said, we have fiber in over 50 cities in the state. Smart lighting, another example of some savings and benefit of a fiber network. This one is a recent project where we're putting in thermal cameras. This is a camera that's in Woodland Hills. We have them in Layton and Orem and a few other places, and several more going in, where they're actual thermal cameras that'll detect hotspots and give early notification to our fire departments of fires before people would see them and call in and report them. And so we have these cameras scanning high-risk bench areas 24/7 and doing analysis and alarms on those. So these are all just kind of like widgets and applications that benefit from having that fiber network, but we do go above and beyond, and we're actually the ones integrating a lot of these smart city solutions. So the main point of this just being that, yes, the internet is awesome and it's great and fast with the fiber network, but it enables a lot more than just internet. It's a connectivity platform for many, many purposes. When we design and build these networks, we've designed them with, it's a dedicated connection to every house. So whether you're looking at cable or wireless or even other fiber networks, they all depend on sharing, and that's a little different than the way we architect things. Because we're open access and we have competing providers and customers on the same system, we give everybody their own dedicated connection. So there's never slowdown during peak hours. There's never any sharing with anyone else because we can't have competing provider customers interfering with each other. So it's a dedicated connection that's always there and always yours. 1 gigabit, and we have now enabled the entire network with 10 gigabits. We have a growing number of 10 gigabit customers residentially and 100 gig customers business-wise. So we're full 10 times faster than any other provider in the state. So we're pretty proud of that. People really like it. This is a third-party survey conducted to figure out what our net promoter score is. So this is where you ask someone, you've probably taken the survey many times, where you get something that asks you, how likely are you to recommend whatever it is to your friend or colleague? And that's used to calculate a net promoter score. And our net promoter score is a 64, which is incredibly positive. Most people really, really like it and recommend it to their friends. And we love seeing social media and stuff because people come on there and say, well, hey, I just moved into the city. What do you guys think I should do for internet? And it just suddenly floods with utopia, and it's really overwhelmed all of the public opinion of what the best service is in the state. We also look at Google ratings. We're top rated on Google ratings, even higher than Google. And they're very limited in just 2 cities in Utah, but we've got it in a lot of cities, a lot of customers, a lot of reviews, and we're still the top rated in the state. It's a very good service. People really like it. We've got a lot of customers. We keep growing. So you can see things were growing and kind of flat maybe 5 years ago, and things have really taken off with more and more technology needs. I mean, this was before, most of this is before Corona. I mean, certainly things kind of got a shot in the arm when Corona came and more people were working remotely and educating remotely, but demand has been skyrocketing since well before the pandemic came. So this is the high level structure of what we're talking about. There's a lot of things we could do. We could incrementally grow in the city. We could partner for schools and city needs, things like that. But if you wanted to get the very best broadband to all of the homes in a full citywide build out, this is what it looks like. UIA determines how much the project's going to cost. We have a high level estimate for this already. And then we would go and do a bond, and we would bill people who sign up, and we would use that money to pay for the debt and pay for all the costs to operate and maintain the system. There's my kid in the background. The city, though, that nothing comes for free, but it kind of does because it pays for itself. But what we do ask is a partnership agreement, and that agreement it's a services agreement that basically says there's a guarantee on the financing of the project, equivalent to an approximate 40% take rate. And what that means, I'll show you what the numbers, how that breaks out. But it basically says that if there's a shortfall financially, then the city would have to loan UIA the money to cover that shortfall until the revenues were where they need to be, right? That's a big gotcha. And you'd be like, whoa, what does that mean? So I'll show you what the dollars looks like and the amount and how that works. However, we don't actually ever want this to cost the city $1. So we put in a whole bunch of protections. This is this risk avoidance section here. So we kind of say, well, this doesn't work everywhere. But we have other projects where those were kind of the thresholds we were looking at, and they've all been very successful. Also, the city revenue and business revenues offset that risk. So if we go get the city on the connections, we get some businesses, anything that's not residential, and there actually is a decent amount of this. And you say, well, it's not a huge part of North Ogden, but compared to a city like West Point, which we're very successful in, you have a lot more business than West Point does per capita. So it's actually not bad in North Ogden. It does help. And then all the demand and increasing technologies helps over time. Also, as new development comes into the city, we have additional opportunity for revenue, and those count towards the obligation and the guarantee, but the take rate, it's not actually a take rate guarantee, it's a revenue guarantee. And so your effective take rate guarantee goes down over time if you happen to be a city where there's growth. And that's a big key for North Ogden. So, and I'll get into that, show you a little bit what that looks like. But the main thing is that out of the gate, the guarantee would be 40% guarantee. And then over time, that would go down to 35, and then the 25%. If you were to double the population of the city or the number of households in the city over the next 10 years or something, your effective take rate needed would be 20%, so that goes down. I don't know how, I mean, you're growing. I don't know if you'd ever get to that point, but that just to give you an idea how that works. And then we say, okay, so there's some risk here, right? I mean, if we didn't get 40% signed up, and there's time to get there, but on the long term here, if we don't get there, would it have been worth the risk? Now, we would make a pretty strong case to say, we don't believe there's any risk and that we'll get the take rate and this is all great. But there's a strong argument to be made that if the city had to pay for this project, it would be more worth it to spend money on this than any other project the city could do. Now, I'm not saying you would. Don't throw me out yet. But these are the benefits financially. So there's a significant financial benefit to the residents and businesses of the city. Statistically, when you bring in a fiber network like Utopia, and there's a link to the study on this, and I'll send you the survey or this presentation when we're done, that there's an average reduced cost of services of $27 a month in savings on average, whether or not you're even a customer. So the people who sign up save money generally on their service. But even those who don't sign up have some other service, and that service will try to compete. You know, you'll get a decrease in price. And so overall, you suddenly just magically save $27 per household per month across your entire city. Like, it's a huge financial benefit to your homes or in your households. You also, on average, see an increased property value of 3.1% when you have a fiber network available. You also protect internet freedoms like net neutrality of the freedom from paid prioritization and rate limiting and a lot of the things that net neutrality was meant to protect, but net neutrality got thrown out. So by having a competitive market, we don't need net neutrality anymore because competition resolves that. You know, you're not going to have a provider going in there and throttling you and prioritizing your traffic and abusing their monopoly position with you anymore. If there's a competitor you can pick. And so we go in with 13 providers and none of those problems related to net neutrality exist anymore. So we solved that. We eliminate the digital divide in the sense that we don't go and cherry pick, right? So right now you've got a situation in your city where there are some areas of the city that have better service than other areas, right? We're not going in there cherry picking where it's profitable and abandoning the rest of the city. We are going to provide the same price and same service and make this available to every address in the city. And it's generally a quality of life improvement. More and more people are benefiting from all the technologies that come across this. And so we would make an argument to say that really there isn't any, if you look at all the potential things that a city might do from a project perspective, there isn't any other project that brings such a dramatic and immediate change in economic and quality of life improvement than a fiber project like this. The cool thing is that you get all of that amazing benefit with no cost. There's no taxes, there's no subsidies. The whole thing pays for itself from the voluntary revenues that people pay for their service. And they're already paying for it now. They're just paying it to someone who's keeping all the money. With this, they pay for the service, they get a better service for a lower price, and it pays for that city asset. This is the breakout of the funds. So this is just the $65 example. So this is a 250 meg service. It breaks out where we get the $30 and that pays for the bond. It does pay for some of these other things. So if we go and get more and more customers over time, it'll pay for that. If someone cancels and someone else signs up, we have an installation to pay for. It'll pay for that. But with $30 a month, we can pay for the project essentially. We also have operations and maintenance and all that other stuff, and that comes as a portion from the retail fee that the service provider bills. So everything the whole thing gets taken care of with that $65 a month fee. This is the structure for your city. We estimated at about a $17.5 million project. That's not a $17.5 million cost to the city. So don't kick me out of this meeting yet. That would be UIA, the Utah Infrastructure Agency. I mentioned earlier has done $230 million worth of these projects approximately. And all of them are paying for themselves. It's had a lot of success with this model. And so UIA would just say, okay, now the next one we're going to do is $17.5 million that's allocated specifically for the build out of North Ogden City. And we need 40% of the households to sign up. And with 40% signed up, the thing pays for itself. And that's a blend. And I'll show you that because there is an assumption in there of some business and the city revenue. That's on this slide. So these are some of the high level numbers that make up our model. Let me go back to this though. Let me just show this chart here. So what happens here is we put in a 2-year capitalized interest. And so if we were to start this has a January 21st of 2021 start. We put in 2 years of capitalized interest into the financing. So that gives us time to build the network, market and sell to customers, to grow those revenues. And all of the revenues that happen before the first debt obligation begins accumulate and act as a buffer, so that if we don't get that revenue above this, oops, sorry, I clicked on it, above this line, we still have buffered ourselves. And this is modeled to be a break even, right? And what I'll show you is every single one of these things has far exceeded this. So this, in our minds, this is a worst case scenario that still costs the city nothing. And in this scenario, it takes us 5 years to get to that 40% take rate. So, they don't just suddenly sign up that first year at 40%. It does take some time. This assumes that first year, we probably only have about 10 to 15%. And the next year we get another 10%. The next year we get another 5%, and then another 5. So this is an extremely conservative model. And then I'm going to show you what we've done in some other cities that have just gone way better than this. Because the best, in our opinion, is the best comparison of what would happen in North Ogden is to go look at what other cities have done in other projects. So anyways, back to the terms of this thing, we've got about 7,000 locations. So that's homes and non-homes. So that could be a church, school, a business, anything that's a potential customer. And it's a moving target. It makes it a little difficult when you guys are growing like you are. But that's about where we're at. And if we come out of this and you say, hey, this sounds interesting. I mean, there's no commitment being asked. But if you come out of this and say, it's interesting enough that we would like to have a more detailed feasibility study, we will actually design the whole system down to the foot, down to the box, down to the fiber throughout the whole city, and then come back to you with the number that you would commit against exactly. But right now we're at estimates. It takes a lot of work to do that, and we do that work for free, but we don't do that everywhere because it is time consuming. So we want to gauge your level of interest first. But with the $17.5 million bond, we build the whole thing out. The city guarantee comes out to about $87,700 a month. Well, it's simple math. You take that number, 87,000 divided by $30 a month, which is the fee that we charge to cover the debt service of the project. That comes out to 2,925 subscriptions needed. So that's a 42% take rate, but that would be if every single address was residential. We come in there and say, hey, what's the city paying right now for services? So let's take that money and we'll give you a better service. We'll upgrade it. We provide city services for lots of cities that aren't even Utopia cities. It's a great service. So we can convert that over, and we'll give you credit for 100% of that money towards this to offset any risk. Any businesses we get in there, and there's some assumptions about those, that pulls us back down to about a 40% take rate residentially that we would need to get. So that's a 40% take rate needed with a blend of city revenue, businesses, schools, and things like that. So this is the other details of this structure. It's a 25-year term. So that's something to be concerned about, right? 25 years, a long time. But we've been doing this since 2002 was when Utopia was created. Demand has only ever gone up. Technology has only ever demanded more, and other options have only ever decreased over a pretty long period of time. We're almost approaching 20 years on this thing. And every technologist, every expert, every company out there is basically saying, yeah, there's some cool stuff out there like 5G, but 5G doesn't replace this need. It's just an incremental increase of what LTE was. And satellite is still way far away from being a competitive threat. And they're just, and they have latency and other problems. Like all of these other things don't actually hurt the ability of fiber to be successful. They actually help. So if we go get a cellular tower and we do 5G deployment in your city, we provide backhaul to those small cells, to the cell carriers, and that revenue counts to this obligation. It pays for it. So anyways, the main point is there's a long period of time here, but all trends and industry trends and forecasts suggest that not only is demand way more than it needs to be now, but it's increasing and will continue to increase. And the initial revenues buffer you against any risk. The business revenues buffer you against risk. And if there is a shortfall and we say, oh crud, you know, we got past that 2 years and we've used up all of the reserve and there's still a shortfall, it's done in the form of a loan. And as soon as we have enough revenue and can take rate, then you get that paid back. So you'll see that there's layer upon layer of protection to make sure that the city is made whole in this, but we've never needed to use that mechanism. These projects have been very successful. I mean, since 2009, I think it's 10 for 10 or 11 for 11 on all these projects. They've been great. We take on a lot of obligation in this. So remember, this is a partnership. So even though the city has a partial guarantee for that initial build out, we're going to guarantee everything else. We're going to guarantee the build cost itself in case there's cost overruns or problems. We're going to be obligated to expand the system over time. If you build new homes, new businesses come in, even higher take rates and additional installations, we are going to pay for all of that with no obligation from the city. And then this last point, and this is a key for North Ogden. You know, we're doing this in a lot of different cities right now, and there's some cities that are landlocked and they're just like, well, it's just going to have to work with what we have. But what happens in a city that's growing is that it is less expensive to put this in as homes are being built, right? If we wait 5 years, it's an enormous lost opportunity because those homes get built and then you don't have the ability, you got to come in later and drill this fiber into those, you know, homes. But if we can get this in place now, you'll benefit by getting that fiber into those homes as they're built. And we'll just pay for the cost to do that because it's a lot less, but we'll give you credit towards all the revenues that come from those. And that takes away your risk. So again, it was that point that over time, you know, these cities that are growing benefit because they say, yeah, it's a 25-year obligation, but at 25 years, I may only need to have a 20% take rate. And again, we've never even seen take rates go down over time. The demand is just going up and up and up. So now we're going to start looking at some cities nearby. This is Layton and the number of subscribers they have. We just barely finished Layton, so we haven't had even the 2 years to market and sell to the customers in all the areas of Layton, but it's trending towards about a 45% take rate, but it's not even slowing down. I mean, it's going like crazy. Financially, the revenues, because of the timing of billing, sometimes it kind of goes up and down like this, but this is the actual billing and revenues out of Layton. We cleared that hump well before we needed to, and we didn't need to use the reserve at all, that initial period, so in this chart, sorry, I should probably explain this. The light lines are the ones that were forecasted and modeled as a break-even scenario, and the dark lines are the actuals. And so we cleared that one with tons of headroom, and now we're paying lots of extra money, not guaranteed by the city, but we're paying a lot of extra money to do additional installations because the take rates and installations are going really well. It's a good problem to have. This is Payson, which hasn't hit its 2-year period yet, but it's trending way ahead of that break-even scenario. That's a $3.5 million project we did there. Morgan is ridiculously successful. So that one, they didn't have a lot of options there. So we built Morgan, and it's killing it. We've got like 53% take rate, and we're not even at the 2-year period. So Morgan, hugely successful. This is West Point. It's trending incredibly well. We still have about 400 homes that can't even sign up yet, and we're trending, whoops, how about this? West Point is trending way ahead of where we need to be, and like I said, it's not even done yet from a construction perspective. And so that'll clear the forecasted. Now, this is another point to say, you'll say, well, wait a second, that light line is not, why is the forecasted guarantee not the same as the actual guarantee? In the contract partnership, you know, your guarantee is tied to the financing. And so if you've done bonding, you've done other projects and things, you probably know, you know, usually you start with like parameters resolutions and things that have some headroom to accommodate market conditions. And then in close, you actually only have an obligation equal to where the financing closes. And so that's what happens here is we start out with this, and I believe that your actual obligation will be quite a bit lower than that estimate that I put on there, but we're going to put some headroom in there just to give us that flexibility. And then when we close, your obligation drops to the actual. So that's what happened here in West Point. It dropped a lot when the, you know, the interest rates are phenomenal right now. So it's a really good time to finance these projects. This is the aggregate of all the UIA projects. So this is $230 million essentially of projects. It has combined projects with multiple cities. We have these dotted lines, which are these city-specific projects, and these are in aggregate. So our debt service and we're paying for all of these bonds with about $1.1 million a month in payment. But our revenues are far above that. So we have this track record. It's gone very, very well. It puts us in a position where we actually have available funds, and that goes back into the city to reinvest in that expansion and growth. You know, it does cost money to grow this system in your city as you build more homes, and we use that, we pay for that, we take on those obligations. So let's just look at take rates. So these are other cities and their take rates. Now, if a city is under construction, obviously we don't have the customers on those that we would hope that we would have, but when we finish construction and then give it a couple of years of sales, then we get to those take rates. And so in all of the cities, with the exception of Tremonton, that have been completed for at least 2 years, we're over the take rate we would need in your city. In your city, we think we would do much better than average. And I'd say, Kim, what do you think about that? Why would we do better than average?
Because, well, we would do better than average for many reasons, is because of the competitive options that you've mentioned earlier, and that it goes into multiple factors. The competitive options that you have up there are not the greatest from compared to what we have, and we offer a superior product. And when you're talking about all what's happening with people working from home and how they're working from home, you need I think one of the key differentials that Roger really hasn't mentioned about the Utopia network compared to others is that we offer symmetrical speeds. Our ISPs offer symmetrical speeds. So when everybody has like a 250 meg download, but they don't have the upload, which you need for these video contents that we're all sitting all our days on and watching people from the luxury of our computer. And you need this very robust connectivity that Utopia Fiber offers. Is that what you're looking for, Mr. Timmerman?
Yeah, I put her on the spot there, but Kim's great.
You didn't even think I was listening. I'm listening.
I was just making sure you're paying attention. But anyways, the point here is that, we compare you to these cities, and it's like, well, is there any reason to believe that you wouldn't do as well as Brigham City or Centerville? And there's a few things in there. I mean, the demographics in North Ogden are good, and we generally get a higher take rate with a good demographic. And, not to insult any of these other cities, they're all great cities. And we don't like to cherry pick good and bad and all that other stuff. But, the reality is reality that you're going to have, your residents are going to be more likely to sign up for the service than they might be in some of the other communities in Utah. And that's partly demographics. It's partly that you don't have very good options there today. And you've even had some providers like Vivint Wireless who'd come in and done very well, and they've since, shut down and left the city. And so you've actually had a decrease in the number of options in the city lately. So, as we compare your options, you have, you're about middle to worse off than most of the average of these cities when it comes to competitive options, but you're also middle to higher end on the demographics and demand side of things. And from the big two, the CenturyLink and Comcast, most of these cities have those two options and many other options, but those are really what we're seeing that you have available. So, we just say, well, if we plugged you in here, where we would expect you to land, I think we'd expect you to land at a 45 to 50% take rate pretty easily. And that exceeds the obligation of the 40% that you need to get, so that you don't have to pay $1. And then suddenly you get a $17.5 million fiber asset built in your city and paid off at no cost to the city, and all the benefits that come with that.
Yeah, and I think if you were even curious about that we can also do a survey to see what the demand is in your city. And we offer a survey and like a feasibility study free of charge if you would like to move forward with that option as well. because I know that we can sit here and talk to you all night long, but you want to believe with what your residents say more than you would probably believe with what we say. Not to say we're dishonest people. We're just, you know.
Always good to have more data. These are some of the specifics, things that we're looking at when it comes to North Ogden specifically. You know, you've got that large amount of future development is a huge benefit to the risk profile for the city. I didn't put the map on here, but there's an existing UDOT 144 count backbone cable that goes, I can't remember the name. I don't know which highway number that is, but it goes east to west through like Pleasant View and then over, and then it turns, goes south. And so we do trade and partnerships with UDOT. So our ability to have a fully redundant backbone in the city that goes through there and south that interconnects with our existing backbone, there's no cost because we are in a trade surplus with UDOT. So we can get access to that fiber at no cost. So that was a big benefit. We've had to put in to some of these projects, you know, $1 million or something, you know, to build some sort of new backbone to get to the city. And there's no cost in North Ogden. So that's a big benefit. And it helps us to build it faster and get customers and revenues faster as well. You've got some schools that are good. We just, like I said, we met with UEN earlier, and there's several schools in the city that we are bidding on. We don't know if we'll win them or not, but that'll help offset some of the risk. And then your nearby cities are doing very well. They'll take rates. You know, the chart showed you at like a 36% take rate in Layton, but then when I showed you the trend, it's skyrocketing still. We're still in that new period. So we expect easily to hit that 45% threshold in Layton. It's trending towards that. And really, they never totally stop. We never have hit a ceiling in any city. So it just kind of goes up and up. But we do want to make sure we cover all of the obligation so that it doesn't hit the city. And then there's, you know, it's not all good. You know, there's some things about North Ogden. You know, we wish it were all good. It does cost a little more in your city to build, right? You don't have a lot of aerial utilities. We're planning this whole thing would be built underground, and you've got some rock in the ground. So, you know, we are expecting a higher than average cost on the construction. And then your density isn't incredibly good. You know, we don't have a lot of big apartment complexes. The homes are decent sized. It's not terrible. We've had some cities where it's more rural and the spacing between homes is greater. Your homes are decently close together, but not, you know, they could be smaller. That helps. So there's some negative parts, but this is a fair look, right? We don't want to necessarily do any projects in a city that we don't see as being highly successful. That would be bad for the city, and it would be bad for us. And so as we look at it, we say, when it comes to North Ogden, we see this as a very low risk project. It's not free, you know, we still have to bond. We still got to go get those customers. We got to market this thing aggressively. We need the city to be a strong partner on this. We want the city to see this as your asset. I mean, we're a public entity and you're a partner to that. So we'd see enormous benefit to this, and all of that would come at a very low risk. So then we say, well, where do we go from here? You know, this is kind of the high level fiber proposal. If you're interested in more data, we have some optional steps here. We have an optional survey that we'd be happy to conduct with the survey or with the city. We don't even want it to have our name on it. We want it to be the City of North Ogden broadband survey to your residents so that you get an unbiased view. You don't get the Utopia supporters out there. I want Utopia, so I'm just going to, you know, put the right answers in here. So we'll keep it generic, but we do have a paid service we use for surveys, and we're happy to leverage that and offer that to the city free of charge. And we've improved these surveys over time. We've got a very good structure, so we can copy and paste that essentially and customize it for the city and run that. We'd like to run it for at least a couple of weeks, and you know, get a very strong statistically relevant sample size of results, and then come and do a follow-up work session with you just to validate what we believe is already true, and that's that you'd have a very strong take rate, and that there's also political support for this, right? I mean, that's another component that's very important in these surveys is, you know, we go into these cities and a lot of times people say, well, I really hate my broadband and I pay too much and Comcast keeps jacking up my rates and I'm ticked off. but that doesn't mean I want the city to come and get involved, right? I mean, you'll hear that. And so we present these options. We ask people, what are your thoughts about the city getting involved? What do you think about, this model of having a guarantee and having these providers come in and ride the network? And then we do go right to the chase and say, well, if you had these options at these prices, would you sign up? That helps us gauge the take rate and the revenues that we might expect out of the system. We've seen these go very well, and there's a lot of support for this. And even, we're seeing subscriber demand skyrocket, but even the public opinion of Utopia and the public opinion of the need for cities to get involved in this, that this has gone from some sort of a luxury service that only some people need to a critical service that we need to support school and work and our economy. That opinion has changed dramatically, and you'll see that in the results of the survey. So we do like that step. It does take a little bit of time. Optionally, a city could issue an RFP and look for proposals. We are a public entity, so we actually issue RFPs for all of the construction and materials and all this other stuff. So it's kind of an optional thing from a procurement perspective. You can leverage that we are following all of the Utah purchasing and procurement processes for public entities, and enter into a partnership with us and kind of go, just decide to do it that way. And then, it's our own RFPs that ensure a fair bidding process. But you could do an RFP and treat us as a vendor rather than a partner. That's an option. It's just how you choose to move forward on that. At the result of a survey and or an RFP, we come back and say, okay, here's your contract. It's the same, it's copy paste really from several other projects we've done, and captures the terms and structure that we discussed of a guarantee of a 25-year project, and all these buffers and protections and reserves and everything that makes sure that you don't ever pay on that. But we do need that guarantee, and it makes sense. It's like we don't need the money, but we need the guarantee and fairness to other cities, right? You just gotta remember, when you sign that agreement, we take that agreement over to the group of Utopia cities that are already partnered to this and say, do you want to do this project in partnership with North Ogden? And they're going to say, well, absolutely, so long as we all have our own risk associated with our own projects, right? So it protects them, and each city takes on not the full obligation, just the incremental. You have no obligations for anything that's been done previously. You have no obligations for anything outside of your city. You just have a guarantee associated with the incremental build out of your city, tacked on and piggybacking off of all of the hundreds of billions of dollars of previous investment that have been made. So it's really kind of unfair to those original cities, but it is mutually beneficial. We get increased customers and economies of scale as we continue to add cities, even though there's no cost to you to do that. So we would like to do the survey, and we'd like to come back and meet with you again. What are your thoughts on that? And what questions do you have? Oh, let me just show you some examples. This is a survey we conducted in a similar city that's not so far away. And we kind of ask, like, what kind of internet do you have? What do you pay? What are your speeds? Why'd you pick what you have? This is a net promoter score, is a -55. And we see this kind of in the -50 to 60. And we're positive 64, you remember that? So people hate what they have. This is an important question. And then we talk about politics, like, what do you think of the city getting involved? What do you think of this model where, subscribers pay? We're not doing a utility fee. Like, if you don't sign up, you don't pay anything. It's just those people who want to pay for it. Here's the pricing. Would you sign up? So there's examples. There's many more questions than that, but those are kind of the key questions. And we'd come back and say, here's the result. We'd map it across the city and continue the conversation from there. There's no cost to do that. At this point, it'd just be kind of like a head nod to the city staff to work with us on that. And if you choose not to pursue it, there's no, that's fine. We can just part ways and leave you alone. But it never hurts to have good data and consider this. We think it's a great project, and we're happy to give you references from these other cities. They love it. It's been a huge benefit to those cities.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Let's hear what the council has to say, get a little input. Hey, Roger, just one question before we get input from the council. since this is a guarantee by the city, in essence, the city's guaranteeing the bond.
Yep.
Have you seen that have any effect on cities' bond ratings because of the guarantee?
We've not. I mean, there's a potential, if you go out for a different bond, they're going to look at your financials, and this will not show up as a debt, but it does mean that the revenue that's used to guarantee this would not be available for another financing, right? So what we've done in a lot of cities recently has been to use a franchise revenue, so non-telecommunications stuff. So your power be like gas and electrical franchise revenues, and basically say this revenue is pledged as the guarantee against this project. So say in 5 years you say, hey, we want to go build a thing, right? And we want a bond for that. The rating agencies are going to say, hey, this agreement you have with Utopia doesn't hurt you because it's not your debt, but you can't use that. You can't repledge that revenue. It does tie that money up. From a bonding perspective, you still have the money to spend. It's still your money. It's only used as a guarantee.
Our financial statements that we have this guarantee.
Yeah, it'd be a disclosure
based upon the probability of that guarantee being triggered. It can show up as debt on a financial statement, right, on the risk. The issue we have, and the councils probably has this in their mind, is we are looking at potentially bonding for a public safety building. And we'd have to shortly look and see what the revenue pledge, would do to that. We're talking about a general obligation bond at this point in time. But anyway, let's go to the council, Roger and Kimberly, and let's start with Councilman Barker, see what he's got to say tonight, where he'd like to go from here.
I'm actually in favor of doing a survey and actually see what our residents think. I'm all for more options because right now in North Ogden, we really only have 2, and it's most areas, it's only 1. So I'm all for finding out what our residents think, and if they're willing to do the survey, that's where my interest lies.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Barker. Roger, just one other question. I have to ask these because I'm probably the oldest one on here, and propensity to forget is greater than the rest of the group. A lot of, for instance, Comcast sells their stuff packaged, right? You have a triple play, you can get internet, you can get home security, you can get television. And I don't know if you've done any analysis if that bundle were to fall apart because people went with Utopia on the internet, the associated offset and savings. I don't know if you've analyzed that too.
Yeah, so just on internet, we have that $27 expected savings. That's based only on the savings you would get from internet. But as people break that bundle, people are picking, like, YouTube TV is probably the #1 option that people are picking as a cable TV replacement. But there are other options like Hulu and Sling TV and other things. But they end up saving another, $30 to $50 a month on their video services as well. And those new streaming services are fantastic. And so people have been really happy, both with the internet service, but also being able to take advantage of those new streaming services. Because if you don't have good internet service, then those streaming services are garbage, or they hit you on a bandwidth cap, right? I mean, Comcast has just announced they're going to start implementing their bandwidth caps again in the spring. And so people are like, well, it's a fast enough connection for me, I'm okay. But wait a second, I don't want Comcast overpriced cable TV anymore. I just want their internet. And they're expecting now to be hitting all those bandwidth caps because they want to be using YouTube TV and Disney Plus and all this other stuff. So it's becoming an increasing problem and an increasing expense for people. And as they unbundle, go ahead, Kim.
No, I was going to say, and if the people want a triple play, we do have providers on our network who offer a triple play as well. So we prefer, just because of the savings, that people unbundle it, but we do have providers who offer all 3 if you would like those options as well.
Let's go to Council Member Ekstrom. She says that she has to have access to the Jazz games.
I actually haven't watched the Jazz games since Stockton and Malone. So yeah, I kind of switched to the Spurs when I moved to Texas. So
Okay,
anyway,
what are your comments, Councilwoman?
I need to get back into it. I just haven't. No, options are great, especially since internet is just as Roger, you were pointing out, Comcast is going to start implementing those caps. And, you know, with everybody getting on, especially more streaming, I don't even use my TV anymore. It's like I have Comcast TV, but we almost never watch it. It's always a streaming service. And, you know, and I have a big household with lots of different people using it. So I would love a dedicated connection. My brother lives in Centerville, and I remember his complaining about getting Utopia. I mean, this was a subject of discussion, right?
I'm sure it was.
when I went to visit, but I think he's been really happy with it now. You know, I think when it first went in, and I think that was one of your first cities, right? So,
Yep.
Yeah, I think he having that wonderful dedicated and high speed internet has been really great. I'm with Councilman Barker. I would like to see a survey done, and I think because I mean, I get pretty good service where I am, but I've got friends in the city that you have terrible service. I mean, horrible. It's like, you know, they can't get anything. And so I think a survey would be a really good idea, just so we can see, because we have to justify it to the residents, especially whereas we are looking to bond and probably pretty soon for our public safety building. We want to be really cautious about what we do with the city's finances. And so far we haven't really been hit. We you know, really scaled back our budget this year just because we didn't know what was going to happen. So far it hasn't really, we've seen increases in sales tax revenue, right, instead of the decreases that we were anticipating. But you know, it's a great big question mark. We don't know what we're going to be doing. So we want to be really cautious. But I think if we have enough pre-support, you know, that comes from the survey, I think we can justify going forward.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ekstrom. And I think that is important. Perhaps before we proceed with the survey, because we don't want to waste their time, we probably ought to find out the effect on the pledged revenue in regards to our potential bond. I'm really in favor of doing the survey and getting feedback from our citizens. I think that's what it's all about. You know, I don't know if this is legal or not, but one of the things we've done in our business when we decide to make a change of a provider and knew we had to hit certain rates, before we did that, we actually got the commitment from our retailers. So we knew we had the 40% take rate, whatever. But anyway, let's go to Councilwoman Stoker. See what Councilwoman Stoker has to say.
Usually not much, Mayor.
Really?
Yeah. I agree with what you said. My biggest concern is to know what this would do to our bonding ability with the public works, and also the public safety, and also how are the residents going to feel if, you know, you mentioned the word bonding and they just stop listening. All they hear is that word. So I'm not opposed to doing the survey, but to see, I guess, where it goes from there.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're used to the bond being a 4-letter word, and some of this is intentional, that we do the bonding and we do the debt intentionally. It keeps your obligation just to a contractual agreement, and it doesn't, you know, it's, yes, there's still an impact. It's a disclosure on your financial statements, but it's a lot softer than if the city were to take on that debt and pay for it. And yet you do get essentially the ownership. I mean, it's not outright owned by the city, but we basically, you know, we can't take it out of the ground and move it. It's there for you forever. And so should be considered a public asset to the city, even though it'd be on our books.
Okay. Councilman Severing, do you have anything to add before we go to Councilman Swanson?
Yes, Mayor. I'm kind of curious if Roger could answer maybe a couple of questions for me. Um, First off, what comes to my mind, where I live, I have really terrible internet service. And we've had to go with TXOX, which is a satellite provider. I think we used to have either Comcast or CenturyLink, but I'm just curious, Roger. So if these other companies can't provide that greatest service, what makes Utopia be able to do that?
It's
And
fiber.
don't you represent CenturyLink and Comcast? I mean, I'm kind of sensing you're kind of like a fiber broker. Hey, we're going to come in and install this fiber, and if you opt with this one, then they're going to use that fiber to your house. And if I wanted something different than my neighbor, I could have something different from. Otherwise, it sounds a little bit more kind of like a monopoly of, okay, we want 50% takes of citizens. So anyhow, I guess I'm probably combining questions, but my first question then originally was, if CenturyLink and Xfinity can't be great where I live, for example, why is Utopia going to be better?
So the fiber infrastructure is infinitely fast, and that, you question that and say, really? And really it is. It's basically a dedicated path for light between our nearest fiber hut, which is also connected with the fiber, and your house. And so with that, you can go up to about 10 kilometers, and we never go further than that in a city. And then we'll do our long haul connections. We can do hundreds of kilometers on those. But we literally could give you a 10 gig connection that is all yours, and no one else impacts that. That's a residential product we offer today, and we do businesses with 100 gig. And the problem with the other providers is cable can't do that. It can do pretty good at short distances on new copper, but the copper degrades over time, and so it gets worse and worse and worse. And their model is that they take hundreds of customers in a neighborhood, and those all aggregate to a single fiber connection. So you'll see that there's actually some fiber in the city. They just don't go to the houses. They go to the splitters, and the splitters have the hundreds of homes on them, and they all share. And that doesn't work well, as they're not willing to make the investment to bring that fiber connectivity all the way to the homes. So it's really the technology and the infrastructure differences between copper and fiber.
Okay, so I'm envisioning that you're actually going to be coming in, and you're going to be building the trench. You're going to be digging the trenches. You're going to be running these fibers. You're not going to use existing channels underground, under the streets and so forth. I mean, you're literally coming in and digging new trenches to be able to run these to individual houses.
So not trenches, but we do underground boring. It's horizontal directional drilling, and so we'll dig a hole, and then we drill under the ground, and then we pull a conduit back through that. So most of the surface doesn't get disturbed at all, and we do that in the public utility easement. So it's just behind the curb, if we can, and it depends where there's space. But your utility easement usually goes 6 to 8 feet into the front yards of the homes. And so we try to do that as close to the street as we can, but we've got to avoid the other utilities. So you basically get a bunch of holes dug in the city, and then a bunch of drills that go underground that interconnect those holes. And then we put boxes in those holes. So our installation is actually really clean. Comcast and CenturyLink, they all have these little green boxes and pedestals and stuff sticking out of the ground. All of our stuff is subsurface, so you don't trip on it or run into it or ride your bike into it. It's like a sprinkler box.
Okay.
And so when we're done, it's all nice and clean, and it's all underground, and very little of the ground is disturbed, or the surface of the ground is disturbed.
You're just going to have to be prepared, because up in my area where I live, there's a lot of rock. So I see a $17.5 million project becoming a lot more. Now, my second question, I hope this is probably more for me than anybody else, but wouldn't it seem a little bit like a conflict of interest to have Utopia actually doing the survey, as opposed to something that's a little bit more non-Utopia? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. What we can do is we would give you access to the live results. So you would have, it'd be like you're running the survey, and we can give you our template, And you can review that and then say, hey, I want you to tweak this question, or I want you to change some things. So we're open to the idea. We've had some cities go in there and say, hey, we want to ask another question or two, or we want to tweak a couple things. We're fine with that. And then it would be advertised and promoted as the city's own survey. So for example, we just wrapped up one in Clinton, right? And Clinton's been sending out flyers saying, hey, come do the Clinton broadband survey. And the city has the access to the actual results live as they're
if
coming
you
in.
wanted to take our survey and put it on your own, like we use Survey Monkey, and if you wanted to run it that way, we will let you do that. Like we're just doing this as a service to you to make it easier to conduct the survey, not because we want to be the ones in control of the data at all.
Well, I've just done enough statistics in my life to realize that, if you're the provider and you're doing a preliminary survey, it does seem to kind of smack a little bit of a conflict of interest. But I'm okay with I'm okay to do a survey. I think it would be to your best interest that it looks strictly something coming from the city, which I know you guys are proposing. But I think we have to be really, really careful about that. So I'm okay, Mayor, to support a survey.
Thank you. Councilman Swanson.
The advantage to going last is everybody said everything. That's a good thing. And Cheryl is smiling. I agree with everything that's been said. I shared Blake's concerns about the independence of the survey coming from the provider who wants to provide the service. So, I think if we can get together and make sure that we have some kind of confidence level on that survey. And then if you guys are footing the bill for the survey, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, all we would ask is that the city advertise it. So in your utility bills and things like that, if you can put in a stuffer, if you can promote it on social media and all that.
And I can help you with all those aspects of how to get the survey out, just disseminate the survey, because we would want to see the most amount of results that we can to ensure, like, if you move forward with the project, that you are confident in the results of those surveys.
Sure.
I'm wondering too, Councilman Swanson, I was hoping at some point in time we would survey our citizens statistically on getting feedback on the public safety building. Sometimes you get survey fatigue. I don't know if there's a way maybe to combine some things on both these without distracting, but anyway, Roger, it sounds like, and Kimberly, that we're prepared to move forward with a survey. Like I say, before we do that, I'd like to find out about the revenue pledge and what it might do to what we're planning with our public safety building.
Do you have a financial advisor that you use?
We do. So we'll talk to them. We do have a financial advisor that we've hired in anticipation of potentially bonding for the public safety building.
Can I ask you who that is, or is that, I don't know if that's confidential or not?
I don't think it's confidential. It's public knowledge. Zions
Bank, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, no, they'd be good at answering that question.
We will have our city manager and attorney, along with our director of finance and probably Councilman Swanson, who has that assignment as a liaison for finances of the city. Let's talk with them, and if everything's looks kosher there, I think we're willing to proceed with a survey. Does that make sense? Okay, so we will do that, and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. Any other questions, council, before we let Roger and Kimberly enjoy the rest of their evening? Looks like you're home free.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. All right, I believe our next item of business this evening is to talk about the Pleasant View Drive potential options. I think we have the folks with us from the Animal Hospital tonight, in addition to Lauren Gardner, our city engineer, who will be the presenter. Hopefully you had a chance to look at your packet. There's some good information there put together by Lauren. So thank you, Lauren. So let's proceed to that point. Lauren, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight we want to discuss different options for Pleasant View Drive there at 400 East. In your packet, I included several exhibits. Why don't we show the first exhibit, which is the existing intersection? John, can you help us with that?
Is it different than the document that's right there right now?
I don't see a document up on the screen right now. Oh, yes, I do. Okay, no, that is the correct one. This shows the existing intersection at 400 East, where we have the turning movements as they are today. We have one lane in each direction going north and south on 400 East, and the same going east and west between Pleasant View Drive and 2650. Both directions, east and west, allow for left turn lanes, allow for through movements, and for right turn lanes. I didn't put in the left turn movement on northbound off of 400 East, but that exists also today. We do have some problem areas where left turn movements off of Pleasant View Drive and through movements in both directions, east and west, are challenging and difficult and cause problems for the traveling public. As we looked at this intersection here, this all came about because we were looking at providing continued access for this business on the corner, on the northwest corner. And when we were talking about the property being sold to them as part of the old public works site, you asked us to look at how would we continue to provide access for them. And so I want to go over a few of the options. Let's look at the next exhibit, Exhibit A, or Option A. So this option here looks at providing a K-rail, which is one of those concrete barriers at the west end, just past their entrance to their offices there. It would allow for traffic to come in off of Washington and go back out off of Washington, but it would completely eliminate any left turns or through movements going east and west on Pleasant View Drive. This option here proposes either a striped median or a raised landscape median that would eliminate any left turn movements, and we would continue to have right turn movements onto Washington coming out of there. The next option, which is option B, let's see, John. Oh, okay. The next option, B, does a little different in that it puts the K-rail right next to Washington Boulevard and allows traffic to flow in and out via Pleasant View Drive from the west and 300 East. And so there would be no left turn movements, no right turn movements off of Washington onto Pleasant View Drive at this location. It does provide them access, but it doesn't allow them to go out via Washington Boulevard. Okay. The next option, which is C1, is very similar to B, except now we've also added a new driveway just south of the building, which would allow them to come in and out of on Washington also, as well as in and out through Pleasant View Drive and 300 East. C2, which is our next option, doesn't add that new driveway, but in the area that's being acquired for additional parking, perhaps that could be improved to allow a new access from the upper parking lot to the lower parking lot, thereby letting them come in and out of on Washington Boulevard at the northern driveway, as well as in and out on 300 East. The next option, which is option D, does not put up any of the K-rails, the big concrete barriers, but it does install a striped or landscaped median, and it prohibits left turn movements out onto Washington through movements going east and west on Pleasant View Drive and on 2650 North. It will still allow you to make a left turn off of Washington going north, and then right turns going south onto Pleasant View Drive. And then you can also go out 300 East if you wanted to, or in and out Washington. I wanted to get your input on these different options, maybe open it up for some discussions. And I know the police chief has some views on what option he would recommend. So I'm not sure if he's a part of this. I think he's involved right now also.
Lauren, this is the mayor. I'm a little bit confused here.
Sure.
I thought one of our objectives was to create more green space to expand potentially Bicentennial Park. I also thought that part of the feedback I've been getting from citizens is that right turn off Pleasant View Drive when people are trying to come out of the business there, the grocery store, is extremely dangerous because of the shortness between the egress there and the Pleasant View Drive turn. But I guess the thing I'm most confused about is I thought part of our motivation was to be able to have more green space there and expand Bicentennial Park. I didn't see that in any of these options.
Yeah, that is not, Dave and John and I met out there and we did not discuss the option for creating more green space, but the options with the barricades do allow, and we can put that barricade at any location along Pleasant View Drive and open that up for more green space if that's desired to expand the park.
And
Okay,
Mayor,
I know John and myself went over there and we kind of observed, we didn't really see any patrons going in and out of that bottom parking lot. We didn't see people really, customers turning in there off of Pleasant View Drive. So, but anyway, I don't know if the chief's on, then we ought to hear from the business there located on the corner. Then we can ask the council questions. So,
and
John, you had a comment?
yeah, we did. The instructions I gave to Lauren were to specifically look at the safety concerns. You know, and one of the options does, as he mentioned, provide a feature that would allow for us to shut the drive off, or I think two of the options. But his main focus and what I had asked him was to talk about his safety concerns and make sure that the intersection is going to function better than it currently does.
Yeah, I think the initial discussion was there wouldn't be an intersection there. We'd close it right off. So, I mean, that probably solves the safety issue right there, but without a lot of thought. But anyway, let's hear if the chief's on, what his concerns are. Then let's hear from the business owners.
So the chief is not currently listening.
Okay. All right, well, let's hear from the business owners.
Okay. Val Pohl is with us, or Dr. Val Pohl, I should say.
I've answered to Clint half of my life. That was my older brother. So you can call me many things and I'll probably still answer. So thank you for spending some time. I'm like the mayor in that I guess this is a different approach than what our last discussion was. We were talking about park expansion. We were talking about obtaining some additional parking and how to make use of the current resources. And the focus here is mostly on safety, which of course we all want to see that, but having half of these presentations, none of them address the park expansion. Half of them don't really give more parking. So a little bit surprised on, did we talk to the engineer about the things that I had given to you or from Johnny Hanson, John, or has that not been shown to him as far as parking along the north side of Pleasant View Drive and having an in and out instead of the median or that landscape island?
I believe Lauren participated in that last discussion when they were shown to the council. But like I said, the instructions I asked Lauren to look at was to talk about the safety issues, and then to come up with some design options to eliminate those safety issues. And as Lauren pointed out, this plan here is a plan that would allow for park expansion and allow for some additional parking options, but we're kind of, I didn't give him instructions to give us a final version. The goal was to have a discussion, I thought.
And that is it. We're missing some components. This particular option that you show there cuts off probably the easiest way by putting that K rail right off of Pleasant View Drive. That takes the bulk of how they get into the pediatric dentist. So this is my least favorite option from a business owner, because it's going to take the pediatric dentist clients. It's much more difficult to get in and out of that facility. Having that K rail barrier to the edge of the parking lot, if you want to go to that. Can we, place it there, get rid of the striped or the landscape median and put parking on the north and still have it accomplish the same thing? We're dealing with the same amount of space. Do you have those pictures that Johnny Hanson had looked at? Or I can share my screen and bring those up. So here's an option that gives more parking, some more green space by the city and the cell towers. And then you could still have your egress and ingress below. You have some landscape island on the very corner there as shown. So that would prevent people from coming in necessarily that way. I think this gives us more options and still keeps safety at the forefront. Doesn't bring a new driveway near the building, gives more parking, and then there's some park expansion options.
Where's the park expansion options if we don't close off Pleasant View Drive at Washington Boulevard? Where's the park expansion option?
Can you, in that area that by the cell tower, can you see that picture?
I can.
Okay, so all the green is supposed to be trees, I guess.
But you got to cross the road, right?
Yeah,
so there's a road dividing it. from
But
the
you,
current bicentennial park.
so across Pleasant View Drive, if there's a pathway there, that's gonna, whether you put the K rail there or you put trees or whatever you put on that, then that's gonna be a dead-ended road, so people could walk across there. You could put some children's swing set. There's really nothing in the park right now for play equipment. I don't know what your plans were, but there's some open space there that could be used. It's just across the other side of the road. So if there's, parking right there, just south of where the cell tower is, then they can park there and use the swing sets or whatever want to be down at picnic tables.
Where does this deal with any of the safety issues that we've been concerned about?
So you still have, people aren't going to be turning in from southbound Washington. I guess they can still get into it, but it has an egress and an ingress. I don't know that you are going to have them go through from Pleasant View Drive over to 2650. I don't think, you would allow that. You would just say you either get a chance to, you have to turn right to get out of here. You can come southbound into the practice, into the pediatric practice, but you have to turn right in order to get out of it.
Well, we weren't there an awful long time, but we saw that mostly used by employees. We didn't see anybody come off Pleasant View Drive and turn into the pediatric dentist's office as a patient. It seems like they were parking up above and coming down.
No, there's two. The upper parking lot is for the veterinary hospital, and so everything comes off of Washington Boulevard from us, both north and south. Pediatric dentist gets theirs off of Washington Boulevard and then from the west on Pleasant View Drive. I don't think that would, have a severe impact to not have them come from Lee's on the west side, but we want to keep that Washington Boulevard option. That's where, they're having people come from Layton and Brigham City, and so coming off of 2700 is going to be the major way that they come into it, and then it's an easy in and out as illustrated here.
If they're coming off 2700, I guess I'm asking the question why they couldn't come up 300 East.
So you're having them go over by the not Costa Villa, but Cafe Rio to go through that.
You've got 300 East there that's become, goes all the way over now from Pleasant View Drive to 2550. And that's one of the things we'd like to have is a major thoroughfare there, so the traffic would generate a light there on 2700. But anyway, this is your preference, I guess, Val, is what you're saying.
Yeah, this is our preference. I think it gives a look to each of the elements that we're all trying to accomplish with some possible park expansion, use of, some additional parking for staff, and still, even for weekend or evenings, people who are at the park could use those parking stalls if they wanted to do that. And it still has an easy in and out from Washington Boulevard. That's the major way that people are coming in.
Okay, thank you.
And you wanted to close Pleasant View Drive off, right? So
at Washington Boulevard, because it solves the safety issue and gives us expansion for the park, but we surely don't want to impede business in the city either. So we're trying to find a balance there. Any other comments, Val, before we ask council for some of their thoughts?
No, I think that this is, as you mentioned, this would be our preference. I think it accomplishes the most good with the least amount of cost and disruption to the businesses.
All right, thank you. Councilman Swanson, let's start with you on your comments.
Thanks, Mayor. I reached out to Chief Quinney and John and Lauren and David Espinoza regarding this, and the option that they preferred was option D. I spent most of the afternoon looking at this and sat a little bit over there today. John, can you pull up option D, please? going back in some of the history of this, Mayor, safety was the primary concern with the proximity, the close proximity of that intersection to the 2600 and Washington intersection. The proximity is just so close that there's just, especially as we expand that intersection over this next year, it's just going to create more safety issues. The safety issues that I remember being identified were predominantly the left turn off of Pleasant View to go north on Washington, the left turn off of 2650 to go south on Washington, and the left turn off of 400 East north to go west on Pleasant View Drive. Those left turns are the most dangerous, and of course the through travel from 2650 to Pleasant View. As I looked at this, the thought that I rested on this afternoon was to, if we take option D here, and I don't think I can draw on my screen here. If we put a K rail at Washington, and we put a K rail just to the east of the lower parking lot of the businesses, there's going to be a light at 300 East, which will give a relatively easy way for folks to get in there. It will be different than going down 2600 and going then up 400. But if we eliminate that left turn there at 400 East to go west on Pleasant View Drive, that one right there, John, if we eliminate that, which I think we should, we eliminate that, there's really no reason for anybody to be going up Washington to try to get into that area. The safer, lower speed route would be to go up 300 East. If you look at the left-hand side over there, would be to hit that light at 300 East, go up 300 East, make that right turn, and then you have only the little bit of traffic coming in and out of that parking lot. The side benefit, of course, is then we have all that area that we can expand Bicentennial Park. But predominantly, the safety issue was the initial conversation with all of this. And so if I had to make a decision right now, I would take this option with the two K rails blocking that entire intersection off and eliminate the three remaining left turns on 400 and 2650. Well, two remaining left turns, so that you can turn right to go north off of 2650. You can turn right off of 400 to go east on 2650, but there's no longer a left to go to 2650 from the southbound 400, or a left off 2650 to go south.
Did you draw where you're proposing the K rails to go?
Yeah, John, if you can put the K rail right after where you put your pink arrow, right there. Yep, K rail right there, and K rail right there. Yep, that's what I would. That's how I would eliminate it. And then if you look at the traffic flow that's to the left of that, the kind of expanded traffic flow view, the natural traffic flow then would be out of the lower parking lot there to the northwest on Pleasant View Drive, and then a left onto 300 East where there will be a light, which gives us a protected intersection there, a controlled intersection, I should say, versus any kind of no control of any type that will ever be allowed at 2650 because of UDOT regulations and the proximity of the intersection at 400 and 2600, where UDOT has agreed to put a light at 300 East and 2600. I think it's much safer to have that controlled, that signalized controlled intersection and have people using that than it is to turn left on Washington and then go to an uncontrolled intersection, or mostly uncontrolled intersection, and try to make a left turn across what will at that point now be, instead of one lane of traffic, it'll be 2 lanes of traffic plus a suicide lane. Well, you'll be in the suicide lane, but it's going to change that intersection quite a bit.
So what do you propose in between the two K rails?
Park space, green grass,
So you'll tear
playground equipment. Yeah, the asphalt would come out, maybe some planters, some things like that, but trees, grass, it would be an expansion of Bicentennial Park. It would be a park.
So why not leave the asphalt there with all the utilities and let parking be there?
Because parking lots aren't parks. Parking lots are car parks. And with traffic, I don't want pedestrians, I don't want citizens and traffic mingling. That's not a good safety concern. So if we have cars coming in and out of there, I don't want people walking there other than to get in and out of their car. To eliminate the issues, the safety issues that have been discussed for years there at 2650 in Washington. In my mind, the way to most effectively do that and have the benefit of adding that park space is what I have suggested here. Get it in my bifocal so I can actually see it better.
You know, I think what you're saying, Councilman Swanson, has some merit, and to Val's point, you could maybe even take that K roll on the west there and move it up a little bit and create some parking for people coming to the
Oh,
park.
sure.
Otherwise,
John, can you draw a line a little bit to the right of that left K rail there? So yeah, say right in there. And Val, I mean, that would give you another 3-4 parking spaces on each side, maybe another half dozen.
We're shooting for 13.
Val, aren't you going to get some additional from the property that you talked about buying?
Well, I guess if I had my preference, rather than buy some property and then put asphalt on it, use the property that already has asphalt on it. So solve the safety issue by putting the K-rail where you need to, because it seems like, and it'll be interesting to hear what everybody else has to say, but it seems like having the K-rail by Washington is going to address most of the safety issues. And the light is on 300 is going to give you in and out. I'm trying to think of, if we're going to tear out all that asphalt, why do that when asphalt needs to be put down for parking? Can there be other ways to, slide that west K-rail even farther, get some parking, and then maybe there's a blend here where you say we're going to split half of that and then have it come up in that corner, because that corner is already grass. Coldwater Animal Hospital, there's quite a bit of green space there. Can we?
So Val, would you still be interested in buying the ground, or are you just saying you would use this city-owned property as your parking?
Well, just looking at different options as I'm coming to understand what your goals are from a safety perspective, what my goals are from a parking perspective. I think that, I'm open to doing a lot of things, but if there's already asphalt and we just need to stripe it differently and close off that end, this might be another way to do that. If you keep sliding that K-rail from the west side over, even halfway through, and then, I wish I could draw, but on this south east corner of the building, it's all grass. So can you have it extend up into there?
That's surely an option we can look at. Let's hear from Councilman Barker and Val. You'll probably understand this. I've got an 11-week-old pup here that splatters about ready to explode.
Yeah.
So I've got to take him out, but I'll be right back. So
emergency.
Yeah, so let's go with Councilman
Sure.
Barker.
It's the puppy's bladder, right, Mayor?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, yeah, he's young, I'm old, so we both have the same problem.
Councilman Swanson, if I was understanding you, you spoke with Chief Quinney and our Public Works Director, Dave, and they liked option D.
Chief Quinney, David Espinoza, Lauren Garner, and our city manager, John Call.
That looking at them, I like option D. Putting up the K rail, that's more, that's similar to option B, C, C1, C2. But
yeah,
I've had a couple council members from Pleasant View reach out, and none of them are in favor of closing Pleasant View Drive all the way down, because that's how all of Pleasant View's residents get into North Ogden.
They can do it on 300 East, can't they?
Well, they can, but you understand it's a change, and they would be in favor of talking to them, option D, where they turn right and there's no left turn. I'm not opposed to saying no left turn onto Pleasant View Drive from Washington, where it's a right turn only, so you can come down south and then turn on right onto Pleasant View Drive and not turn left going north. My only hang up with turning that into a park is there's no parking lot. Right now they share a parking lot with Lee's, and we get complaints that they're taking all their parking spaces to go fill up their water jugs. So if we make the park bigger and add more features, then we're going to take even more of their parking lot. And so if we make the bigger park, then we got to make more parking lot for the park. So I'm in favor of just option D, the way it's designed, and eliminate the left turn off of Washington. And I guess I can keep talking since the mayor's not here anymore. And
well, we have our mayor pro tem here, Cheryl. She can run the meeting for a minute.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true, huh?
No, we can't adjourn yet, Cheryl.
Oh, dang.
That's the way the mice will play. Is that the saying?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on then. Council Member Ekstrom.
Okay, I mean, I think we could do a hybrid here, right? Can we design kind of a win-win? Can we get enough parking along there so that it's shared between the city and the animal hospital and the pediatric dentist's office, so that we have a little bit of park space there, but it's mostly just an access to go. You know, if Dr. Paul is willing, we can use that landscaped corner of his as kind of a park area too, right? And so then people can actually cross, but then they've got a place to park also. So we've got parking for the park, parking for the office building, and access to the landscaped area on his property and the landscaped area on the city's property. So it can be just like a kind of more of just a little pathway there. But you know, as far as not wanting to close off Pleasant View Drive, my husband was like, oh, I don't do it either. But you know what, I read this quote from Steve Jobs when he designed the first iPhone, that it's like, oh, nobody's going to want to text like that. They're used to buttons, and it's like, your thumbs will learn. And you know, going this direction is much safer. It's a little bit different, it's a little bit out of the way, but I think people will get used to it. You know, I think it will be a lot less hair raising once they get used to kind of going this way, that they'll actually kind of appreciate not trying to turn left or turn right there at that intersection, because it's horrendous. I've done it, you know, myself, trying to turn even after I've dropped my kids off at North Ogden Elementary. So I like this option, that kind of the hybrid with a little park space and with the parking.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Let's go to Councilwoman Stoker.
Well, dang, I was hoping I could still be Mayor Pro Tem and go last.
Feel free. Feel free.
So then I can just say I agree with everybody else, what they've said. I have nothing to say. But I do like option B. I've never really, for some reason, been in total favor of shutting Pleasant View Drive all the way down. And if we can make it a right turn only and improve the safety issues, then definitely. But I've never been in favor of closing it all the way down. And I do think Councilman Barker brought up a good point on being considerate of our neighbors. And yeah, you're right. They do have 300. And I think once that light goes in, that will solve a lot of that problem anyway.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Severing, I don't know if you had a chance to speak. Would you like to
Yeah, I was kind of interested in seeing, Dr. Paul, was there more? Did you have additional exhibits that you had put together?
We
Is
had
that
the
the
one,
only one?
just the ones that John had shown. Because I wasn't approaching it from a safety issue. I think the engineers done that, but the ones that we have shown that focus mostly on parking along Pleasant View Drive and keeping Washington open are the ones that we had thought. There's some things here that I hadn't seen this packet before, so I'm sorry I'm not prepared to, I'm just right now, so.
Well, that's okay. And I really see that, I really see in many ways, we're impacting your business, and we're impacting the veterinarian business in a negative way. That's my first option. So I'm really hoping to find a win-win. I like what Councilman Barker said. I don't know if I'm totally in favor of creating a park, because heck, I sit there in Lee's parking lot and watch how many people come and go getting water filled up. If we throw in some swing sets and some other playground equipment, that's even more parking that's going to be gone. And then I think I really like the idea that, and I thought this too, so it's just a second witness to this, but the impact we're going to cause on Pleasant View City. I mean, I don't know how we would feel if all of a sudden Pleasant View City had control of a road that impacted North Ogden citizens, and they just said, "Hey, we're just shutting this down, man." So in my mind, here's just what I'm thinking. I wish we could adapt something like the exhibit that Dr. Paul showed, where there was additional parking on the north side of Pleasant View Drive. And maybe instead, if you're coming southbound on 400, I'm going to try to make this as clear as I can, okay? So if you're traveling southbound on 400, and then you turn west and make that street right there a one-way heading westbound, and then people would just have to know that it's a one-way. They pull out of the parking area, and they have to go to 300. I don't know if I think because of the safety issue with 400 East, I don't know if I like the idea of having a left turn if you're traveling northbound. I think that's something we're trying to avoid. But I don't know. That's kind of some logic I'm seeing with this.
Hey, Blake, I have a question. With the widening of the road, do you think people are really going to come along Pleasant View Drive heading east, try to get across that 400 and then turn north and then try to turn into the parking lot? You really feel like customers are going to do that? And I talked to Mayor Call. He'd love to have that road closed. However, he doesn't speak for the council.
Well, like I say, I would not favor a left-hand turn off 400 onto Pleasant View Drive, because I think that's one of the safety issues we're trying to avoid.
I'm talking about coming along Pleasant View Drive and turning left
into the
heading
parking
north on 400 East.
Yeah, so my thought is just that we do a one-way that goes west, and you won't be able to do that. So if you're coming down 400, you could turn west, and you would be on that southern lane. Does that make sense? So if I'm coming down 400 and I turn right onto Pleasant View Drive, I'm turning onto a one-way that goes westbound, and I'm heading west to go into the parking lot. And I've passed a bunch of stalls that I could park at, but I know that once I back out, I can't go back. I can't go east again. I have to go on a one-way west. And then I have to go back out to 300 and then back down to the light. So
doesn't that effectively block off close Pleasant View Drive? to Pleasant View residents. That's going to force them all onto 300 East, as if we had the K rail on there.
Well, we run it westbound and we run it westbound to 300 East. You know, one way to 300 East.
It still closes off Pleasant View Drive on its way to Pleasant View though, right? If we're thinking correctly.
Well, yeah, Mayor, I'm just trying to propose some thoughts to see if we can't get.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
some
that. I'm just
additional
trying to
stalls
understand.
for Dr. Paul and yet still trying to make it a safety kind of an issue. So just a one way was just something that came to my mind. And then, you know, once it got to 300, I don't know. I mean, maybe it could turn back into, maybe we could put in some kind of, I don't know, some kind of, what do they call those on the street? The markings that allows you to continue on westbound on Pleasant View Drive. But then somebody who's coming eastbound has to turn right on 300 East because they can't go any further on Pleasant View Drive.
No, I appreciate your comments. I think we had to look at all options. I'm just trying to understand them.
Well,
Paul, I have a question. Currently, do you have customers come along heading east on Pleasant View Drive, crossing Washington Boulevard, heading north, and then turning into your parking lot? How do most of the people get there now to your business?
The veterinary hospital?
To the hospital.
Yeah, they'll come off of Pleasant View Drive. I mean, most of our clients are within a 3 to 5 mile radius of the building. And so they're coming, you know, a lot from Pleasant View. They'll come down Pleasant View Drive, take the left-hand turn, and then come up and take another left-hand turn into the upper parking lot.
See, which seems to be
coming.
Yeah.
Those that are up higher will come down south off of Fort.
right.
But then there's some that are coming from Ogden that'll come up Washington and just turn into the left.
Yeah, it just seems that it's going to be much more dangerous. I think, as Councilman Swanson's pointed out, they're going to have to cross a lot more lanes now when that road's widened. It seems like we'd actually be creating more of a safety issue, letting them come off Pleasant View Drive, trying to Phil, cross 3 lanes of traffic, the 2 heading south and the 1 heading north.
They'll have a light at, correct?
No, there won't be a light there.
In Alberta, there won't be a light.
I understand the light. This is Pleasant View Drive. I'm talking about a light at Pleasant View Drive and Washington Boulevard. I don't think there's any plan for a light there that I'm aware of.
No, I'm talking the light up at Washington and Alberta that's going to give a break from the southbound traffic so that in the turning lane, they can turn left into our vet hospital. Correct? There's going to be a light at Alberta and Washington. I think that's what John told me.
Yes.
Okay. So there'll be a light at Alberta and Washington. There'll be another light at 300 and Pleasant View Drive, 300 East and Pleasant View Drive.
I think we're still creating a huge safety issue by allowing or encouraging even a left turn off of Pleasant View to go north on Washington after we've had this intersection widened. And, you know, and it's not just right now, it's 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when we're close to build out, when there isn't anything else going on. You know, there aren't any other widenings or anything that are going to happen and give us the opportunity to make sure that this is safe here. And you have all those homes that are up high, both Pleasant View and North Ogden residents coming down Washington. That's going to be the busiest road we have in town. It already is, but it, you know, when we have all of that building that goes on up high on the bench, along Long Bench and all that, we're going to have a lot of traffic coming down Washington.
Which is why we bought this particular spot, because we wanted to have all that traffic. It's just being able to get them into business is some of my concerns. If we make it too cumbersome, then we've lost one of the biggest benefits of buying that corner lot.
Well, I have a thought, and I don't know that I want to verbalize it without talking to John first and to see if it's even something that could be a possibility. Shoot.
It's a safe place. You can go ahead and say it.
But is it really safe, or are you guys just wolves in sheep's clothing? I know how you veterinarians are. You're very good at pretending to be animals.
If I don't like you, I can always sedate you. That's right.
Oh, hey. Okay, never mind. We won't get off on a propofol discussion here. Boy, we just got off track really bad. Sorry, Dr.
Is it time to adjourn?
Almost, Cheryl. Well, I'm just going to say it, and it's just thinking out loud. If it can't be done, it can't be done. If it's not to be considered, it's not to be considered. What if in recognition of the impact that we would be having on the business there, that John, can you go back to, well, I guess can you draw on this one right here, John? The image, the satellite image that you have up right there. Oh, you can. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. So can you draw a K-rail at the intersection of Pleasant View and Washington right there, please? And a K-rail at the entrance to the lower parking lot right there. Yeah. And what if, in recognition to the impact that would have on the business, that we exchange, or for an incredibly nominal fee, the land that would allow, I mean, it's not land that we're ever going to use, right? That's really good for anything other than parking. But we exchanged that for parking, John, where the, yes, right in there. Thank you.
By the cell tower, yeah, where they want to buy it.
And instead of buying it for, whatever it was going to be, it's not like we're going to put in a new Pizza Man pizza building there or something like that. It's somewhat unusable from that perspective, but it could be a nice little parking lot. And we have the opportunity to expand our park. We address the safety issue. And we also recognize and address some of the impact that we have on that business. I'm throwing spaghetti at a wall, folks.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to consider all options, Phil. So thank you. I know when John and myself were over there, we talked about maybe that piece of property that they were looking at buying is to have the entrance into the parking lot there. There's one thing that I think people need to consider here, and that park, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but the parking where that stump is private property, where people park at Lee's, and Lee's is not, I think, overly excited about that, because if you see that, it's really congested at times, and people are backing out, and people are coming down trying to get through the parking lot. And that's really created a lot of congestion on that private property. And so I wouldn't be surprised if sometime Lee's prohibits, parking there by the stump, because it creates a huge amount of congestion for them, with people coming in from the entrance on Washington Boulevard. So if we could create some parking up there to be used by those who are using the stump, it might be helpful too. But John, when you and I were there, we talked about having an entrance into that bottom lot through the city property that Phil just mentioned.
And you're correct, Mayor. And I don't know. I need to probably look. Part of the Lee's Plaza was redeveloped by the city with the RDA funds when it started. And there might be a public parking easement for the stump there, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't help to relieve the stress on it as we move forward.
We probably ought to find that out, because I know it creates particularly on the weekends, on Saturday, it's quite congested there with people walking across with their bottles or backing out where people are trying to, go down to the store and park. But I think we've talked about some pretty good options tonight, including Dr. Paul's discussion. I think the purpose of our meeting tonight was to get input and to look at different options. If I'm understanding right, and I'm sorry I missed Councilman Barker's comments, but it's better than having the problem with a 11-week puppy. So, but it would seem like the K-roll there at Washington Boulevard and Pleasant View Drive is talked about by the majority of the folks, I believe. And to Councilman Severing's point, I think we ought to try to look at everything we can to have a win-win here. I don't think it's going to be a situation where there's probably zero effect for that corner, but we ought to try to minimize it. So any other comments? I think we've had a good discussion and we've got some options we reviewed here to consider in a council meeting. Dr. Paul, any further comments you have?
So if you were to take all these options and say we're really wanting to consider two, which ones are at the top of the heap right now? Could you formalize that in my mind so I can?
I think, I'm sorry I missed Councilman Barker's, but I believe the option that's drawn right there is surely one of the top options, the one that's on here. And I don't think Councilman Swanson's suggestion is significantly out of order at all. I mean, I think that's something we ought to consider because I think it would be helpful to you. I know it doesn't satisfy that K-roll right at Washington and Pleasant View, but if I understand right, and I'm sorry, I missed part of the discussion, that this is a high priority right here that's on the screen.
Yes, it addresses the safety probably better than any other option. And it gives some opportunities for additional parking and then, whatever needs to happen. So Councilman Swanson, what are you suggesting between the two K-rails? What are you suggesting happens there?
Asphalt comes up and that becomes green space.
Okay. All right.
So it would blend into the southeast corner of your lot there where you have it so nicely landscaped. And that would be an area that people could walk, feed the ducks, whatever kind of thing. Mayor, as I made that proposal, I was thinking about some of the incentives that cities and North Ogden, frankly, has done with other businesses to encourage their participation or their residency here in North Ogden. I think considering that exchange would fall appropriately in line with those kinds of things.
I think it surely helps a win-win situation, or at least more of a win situation. So I think that's a strong consideration. But we ought to have further conversation with John.
Absolutely.
Council, any other further comments, or Dr. Paul, you asked for what option 2 might be?
Yes.
John,
the option D where you keep it open, would have maybe the same thing. Option D keeps it open, but still in exchange, for the property up by the cell tower.
When you say keeps it open, are you talking off of Washington Boulevard?
Just Pleasant View Drive, so that they have that one right-hand turn, but there's not a left-hand turn off of Washington onto Pleasant View Drive. I think, can you go back to D really quick, John?
I guess I'm still a little bit, and I know John had this on a safety basis. And I may have misunderstood, but I don't see where this helps expand the park.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. So I just didn't know if these were the two that we had to choose between, because if these are the two, then this one doesn't address the park, whereas the first one would.
Well, I think, to Councilman Severing's comments, we surely could have that as an option. It covers the spectrum from one end to the other, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
His comments are very considerate of the business aspect, which we surely want to be, but I think it would be a distant second in my mind.
Okay. That helps me. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody's time. I think we've made some really good progress tonight.
You feel okay about our discussion, Dr. Paul?
I really do. I appreciate everybody's brain power, particularly at 8:10. And that puppy, I'm very excited that puppy had such good resiliency.
Or toughness, also toughness, right? Yeah, it might be more, I might have taken on more than I can handle with a new puppy, so.
Takes your mind off COVID for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your input, Dr. Paul, and thanks for joining us tonight. And we'll have further discussion and see if we can't come up. Like I say, Councilman Severing brought up some issues that hadn't been considered, so I think we've covered the spectrum. So we'll go back to the drawing board and come back with option A and B and narrow it down to 2. How's that?
That sounds perfect. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too now. Thanks, Council, for your comments on that. So we'll go to item 4 then. Do we have any public comments, John?
Yes, we do have a comment from Brenda Ashdown.
Okay, Brenda, if you'd give us your name and address again, we'd appreciate it.
Brenda Ashdown, 193 East Pleasant View Drive. I may be making some enemies, but this is my opinion. And whether it has any more value than anybody else's because I live here, I don't know. When 200 North, 200 East was put in, they stopped that subdivision at the bottom because they were going to put in the new road. When new people moved in, they got very upset because that subdivision was stopped. And they were told by the city, in the general plan, this road has been planned here. You should have done your research. You are out of luck. It is my understanding that in the general plan, the plan is for Pleasant View Drive to be stopped, blocked, ended. I don't know if that was before or after Dr. Paul bought his business, but at this point, I guess that's neither here nor there, but it's really hard for me when there was no consideration given to any of the residents that the city is willing to change the whole general plan for a business. The second thing is the only reason people drive to the end of Pleasant View Drive to get onto Washington is to turn right. You do not, if they have a little bit of brain in their head, they do not go to the end of Pleasant View Drive to go straight across or to turn left, especially after you've expanded the road to more lanes. If 300 has a light at 2700, there's no reason to go to the end of Pleasant View Drive because you go to 300. Right now, nobody wants to go to 300 and turn left because you have to turn against all of 2700's traffic. But if there is a light there, then that's where everybody's going to go. As far as putting the trees across the road and the park going over by the old fire station, I mean, for what? They're going to go to look at a tree? There's nothing over there to add to the park, in my opinion. It is not a park that needs to have playground equipment. It's just a park that needs to have greenery, a couple of more picnic tables. That's what people do at that park. They go there to feed the ducks, the kids wander, they play a little bit in the water, and they will, you see quite a few people, old and young, eating at the couple of picnic tables that they have there. So I don't see that as a huge deal. The extra greenery would be nice. When I first read the general plan about closing Pleasant View Drive, I was a little bit upset, but living here, trying to get out on that road as it is now is ridiculous. And with the addition, to me, it's new. I know it's years old, but I've been here for years and years. To have that entrance into Lee's there by McDonald's, to have people zipping over, because that lane, 2-lane road goes down to 1 lane. You have people on the right trying to get in your 1 lane. You have them trying to get all the way across to pull in that driveway to Lee's. And then I'm going a half a block to turn left on Pleasant View Drive to get to my home. That is dangerous. It's ridiculous. I can't tell you, every time that happens to me, I cuss the city for putting that driveway in. I understand there needs to be more than the 1 access to Lee's, but that made a huge mess for us getting home. My husband said, you got to take notes because you won't say everything you want to, but I think that's everything I want to say.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think that's everything that I want to say.
You need an
Anyway.
assistant, Brenda. Tell him he ought to continue on if you missed something.
Did I miss something?
I'm sure
He doesn't know because I was listening on my earphones and it was talking.
You know, and Brenda, it's amazing, but if you sit there for a while, it would amaze you that people do try to turn left off Pleasant View Drive onto.
Oh, they do. I know they do. I watch them. I sit there trying to turn right because I don't want to turn left across 2700 either. And people come and try to turn left. And then I can't see to turn right because they've pulled further in front of me. And you sit there for a very long time because they can't get across the road as it is with the 2 lanes now. And there was one other thing I said, and I don't want it to come across too offensive, but it's not the city's job to provide public parking for a business. And that's I get the trade as far as if you're going to close the road and that's going to affect him. I get the trade as being a very reasonable price for him to buy those extra parking places that he wants. But I don't feel it's the city's job to provide him with parking for his business. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you for participating with us. We always appreciate your comments.
Well, I don't know. This one was a little bit of a hot one for me. I couldn't wait till it was my turn.
That's okay. That's okay. The important thing is you gave us input.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right. Anything else, John? Any other public comments?
Nope, not at this time.
All right, perfect. Council, staff, any comments from you? Further comments? I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I think we had a nice green light session. Councilman Severing, thanks for bringing up some ideas that hadn't been considered before, and we'll take those into consideration. And thanks to all the council members for expressing your opinions, and I'm sure we'll come to a resolution that's the best for the city and the business that we can. The important thing is that we have the courage to make the right decision, right? For the long-term benefit of the city. Anything from staff, John? Anything from you or Ned or any of the staff that's with us?
No, just a reminder, I sent you an email about connecting with your departments you're in charge of during the holidays. We hope that you all have that opportunity. And we, I can tell you that the employees recognize and are appreciative as you do connect and show up, from ride-alongs to attending staff meetings and things. It's, they're very appreciative of it.
And just to inform the council, in our staff meeting this morning, we did ask Evan if he'd had a chance to talk with the auditors in regards to the hazard pay for public safety. And I just want to pass on before we close a conversation I had. I conveyed this to Councilman Barker earlier today, but I have my best friend who got killed. Many of you may remember Ron Hershey. his son is an emergency physician, and he called me. I wanted to make sure that we publicly expressed our gratitude to our first responders. He was telling me about, the number of COVID cases they're bringing in on ambulances in the confined space, and what a great job first responders are doing. And so just want to publicly express, and I know on behalf of the council, we all feel the same way, that our first responders are really instrumental in keeping our citizens safe. So I talked to Councilman Barker about going down and meeting with our first responders at the fire district, and he's going to set a time up. And if any of you would be interested in also going down and expressing appreciation, once Councilman Barker gives us a time where we can visit with as many of those as we can, you're welcome to come. But he was very, very passionate about the work that they're doing. So I just wanted to pass that on. Okay, thank you again for spending a couple hours of your valuable time with us, and great discussion tonight, great ideas. And John and Lauren, if you would kind of follow up, and I think we identified our preferred preference, but if you could take some of the other comments that were made by council and Councilman Severing, and maybe do a hybrid based upon those comments for our consideration. I think we'll be ready to move along. I know time's kind of the essence if we're going to do something, because we'd like to kind of do it in conjunction with the widening of the road if we can. So have a great evening and keep smiling. Life is great. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Move to
We
move
need
to
a
adjourn.
motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
I think the mayor took over my job in dismissing us.
Actually I think under Robert's Rules of Order, you don't need a motion to adjourn.
Well, then, what are we waiting for?
Somebody can correct me on that.
Well, under Bob's Rules of Orders, you do.
I think our procedures do require a motion to adjourn, but we can verify that.
Well, if it is, let's change it, because I can see fist fights happening with the council over who gets to make the motion to adjourn, John.
Okay.
All right. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.